Okay, welcome everyone to Vegetable Basics. My name is Carrie Wright. I went through the Master Gardener program last year. This is my first time presenting, so be easy on me. I am from Jones County, and I have sandy loam soil, so it's a lot different from what Abilene has. It's a little bit challenging to grow in, but I'm trying to figure it out. And this is Dawn Graham.
I'm Dawn Graham. I'm also a master naturalist. I graduated last year. We were actually in the same class, so this is quite exciting. My first presentation as well, so bear with us. It's something we love though, so it's going to be easy.
Okay, let me figure out this story. Okay. Has anyone, I guess, is this the first time you're gardening? Like you're going to plant some vegetables, or has everybody planted vegetables before? This is your first time?
First time.
Wow, okay.
I tried, but it
You
didn't.
try. Any success stories?
I
No.
think the past
Okay.
2 years with the drought we had, it was difficult for everyone. So, you know, we just keep trying. It's a passion.
Doesn't help to plant tomatoes in the middle of the summer either.
Yes, that I've done that, and it did not work well at all. Okay, so these are the topics we're going to cover. Again, ask questions along the way. All right, your garden space. What does your garden space look like? Do you have it picked out yet? If you have the desire to plant, you will find a way to make space for your plants. So how many of you are going to be row gardeners? I'm a row gardener. I plant in the ground, in rows. Got another one? Okay. Dawn, do you want to talk about rows?
I'm a raised bed gardener, but row gardeners are exactly what it is. It's a row, and you actually mounding up different types of materials, compostable materials, and then in that row is where you're going to plant all your vegetables. Row gardening, raised bed gardening essentially is the same, but you're actually containing all that dirt in whatever material you want. I use wood. You can use cinder blocks. You can use any other type of block. I like raised beds because they're easier to maintain. They're easier to weed, easier to water, and I just love raised bed gardening.
So how many of you have raised beds? Majority.
Yay.
Yeah.
Plus you can put whatever dirt you want into
Yeah.
it, and you don't have to, she's nodding her head.
It's
Taylor
it's a
County.
better, yeah, it's a better microclimate right
Yeah,
here.
the soil is horrible. Horrible.
Does anyone plant within their flower beds? Plant your vegetables within your flower beds? I had some established, you and I are on the same page. I had some established native plants, and I was like, well, there's a space there. Let's throw a tomato, throw a pepper. And so you have, you know, an edible garden within all the flowers and bushes. What about buckets? Who plants some buckets or any type of containers? Yeah, good. You have anything on container garden?
On buckets, after we're done, I have a little write up here on how to start your little 5-gallon bucket. So if that's something you're interested in, just a little tip up here for that. It's easy growing in 5 gallons. I have rosemary in 5-gallon buckets right now. I tried squashes. I wasn't too successful with squashes. Tomatoes did fine. But the thing about the buckets is you can move them. If you don't have a lot of sun and you know where there is some, you can move your bucket there, and then when it gets too hot, you can move it back to the shade. So it's portable.
Good. What about vertical gardening? Anyone use trellises? I've seen some stackable. John, you got trellises. Some stackable, I think it was Dollar Tree or something. I don't know if I'm supposed to mention that, but they had some type of 3 pots, and you stack them up. And the lady her video I was watching, they kept falling over. So if you do any type of stackable containers, make sure you support it well.
Cattle panels make great trellises as well, and then you can do some decorative things with it too when you arch it, and you can walk under it. And if you're growing cucumbers or gourds or squashes, you know, they stay off the ground, so you could just pick them as you're going by.
Mm-hmm. Pole beans too.
Pole
They work
beans,
really good
yes,
for pole
yes.
beans. So once you have your space, you know exactly where you're going to plant, get a soil test, especially if you're in ground. You need to know what your pH is. So if there's plants that maybe require a lower pH. So I bought some blueberry plants on a whim, and my pH is a little high for that. So I'm going to have to amend the soil in order to lower the pH. I think the same thing with azaleas, which is a flower, not vegetables. And then hydrangeas, maybe, that the pH
Hydrangeas are
changes
acidic.
the color of the blooms. So that's a whole another topic, right?
Azaleas.
I'm going to touch on the soil test. In the back where you came in and signed in, we have some soil sample bags as well as the information. You could read that over. Always get a soil test. I mean, I got a soil test on mine, and I'm going to read you what my test came out. I am in Taylor County. Now keep in mind, mine are raised beds, so it's not actually the dirt. All right? My nitrate was pretty good. My phosphorus was skyrocketed, as well as my potassium, calcium, manganese, and sulfur. So if I do any amendments to my raised beds, it's only going to be nitrogen, nothing else. I don't need to do anything else in my raised beds. And you had one as well.
And I took a sample out of my garden, again, sandy soil, out of the ground, and my pH was 6.5, which is really, I mean, it's a little acidic. My nitrogen, let's see here, was 12 parts per million, so it was average, I guess. Phosphorus, I'm reading two different things, 16 points per million, and then potassium was a 106. So, and then it tells you your fertilizer recommendation. So if you have not gotten a soil test, if you're planting in the ground, I would highly recommend it. Soil is the number one thing for your gardening, is to make sure it's successful, is make sure you have the right nutrients in there for your plants. Yes.
You not have to have, or be aware of which nutrients you need for a particular type of vegetable?
Yes, when you're planting a vegetable, like these right here, this is spinach. There's always going to be something on the back telling you a little bit about that vegetable. But you, as gardeners, you should do your due diligence and research it as well. And on the back of seed packets, they're always going to tell you, what you need for this particular plant. And you don't want to plant one plant with another plant that does not share that same information, because you'll be beating yourself up trying to keep them both alive.
Yes.
Do you recommend soil testing yearly?
I think it's like every 3
3 years.
Yeah. Good questions.
What was the question again? I didn't hear the question.
How often do you get a soil test? And it's recommended every 3 years. Okay, so then let's see, we've got our soil checked off. Make sure you have a reliable water source. I have hoses that go every which direction. Some people have sprinkler systems. I also collect rainwater, but I don't have a way to get my rainwater to my garden because my roof structures are 500 feet away. So I would have to take that over by buckets. So just make sure that whatever water source you have, it is reliable. Rainwater is few and far between here, so when we do get a rain, it's great. But in the drought times, I may not have any rainwater to put on plants.
And another thing on rainwater, if you're catching rain off your house, remember our roofs are asphalt. So whatever's on your roof is going to be in that water. I don't personally water with rainwater coming off my house on my vegetables. I will flowers, but not my vegetables. I have a little shed that I also catch water from. That goes on my vegetables.
Do you do like a drip system or a sprinkler system? Or is it
Well, I do a lot of hand watering. My garden is fairly new. This is the second year, or this will be the third year that I've actually planted in it. So it's just hoses, what are they called? The flat drip hoses, the soaker hoses. Yeah, the soaker hoses. The soaker hoses that are kind of...
It's kind of like fabric, and they expand when you turn them on.
Those don't work well because I have a well, so the pressure doesn't work well with those. I have to get the flat hose, soaker hoses, where one side has holes on it. One side is supposed to have holes on it. Sometimes you order them and they come in and they have holes all over the place. So I dealt with that last year too.
Was there a question in the back?
Yes, concerning the soil, is there anything that would change the pH of the soil? Like if we got too much rain in a place one year or something like that?
I'm not 100% sure on that. John, do you know? Or any other master gardener?
About the only thing you can really do to change your pH at all will be add compost, and that'll bring it more towards the neutral level. Trying to take your soil normally and just add an amendment like sulfur to make it a little bit more acidic does not work in the long term. It will work short term, but it very quickly goes back to its natural pH. The only real amendment that'll help is compost, and lots of it.
And you can always, even at home, there's various different home meters that you can also use to check and see where you're lacking. This one particular, you can do moist, light, and pH, so it'll let you know a little bit about your soil. But again, the soil testing, that's paramount to at least get you started.
What are those called?
It's just a soil test meter. There's various different kinds.
I don't know how reliable they
Yeah,
are.
but at least
I've
it's
never
a-
had anything to be able to check against that. And if you leave those outside, they don't work very well.
No.
Let's see here, hardiness zone. So I've got another slide on this. I think it's more for perennials, but if you look at the back of a seed packet, you're going to have, most of them have a map, and it's going to kind of have the same zones lined out as what the hardiness zone map is, and I'll tell you that in just a minute, or show you that in just a minute, but it'll tell you, like on your seed packet, oh, you can plant this February to April. Let's see here, and sun requirements. Wherever you're using or going to plant your vegetables, make sure you know your sun requirements. You know, some say full sun, some of them may be sun to partial shade. So if you're watching, sit all day, no, don't do that. Watch the sun and how it goes across your property or your gardens. I know someone that plants in the shade of mesquite trees. They have a very successful garden, and they plant in the shade of mesquite trees so they can have, you know, I guess their tomatoes. I planted in the shade of a pear tree. All my tomatoes were in a pear tree shade for the afternoon, and they were beautiful plants, but because of the heat, I didn't have any tomatoes because the blooms don't set after they reach, what, 90 to 95 degrees. Okay, let's see here.
Ma'am,
Yes.
on your well water,
Yes.
what do you do? Does it make a difference if you have a lot of alkali in it?
I think mine is, but I haven't had my well tested in a long time, so I don't know. It would probably impact it. You'd probably need some type of filtration on it. I don't filter mine though. So, and most of my plants survive. Yes, ma'am.
So filtering the well would be okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen people where they have, they get some type of filter and they put it on their misters. And I don't know if that would be the, you know, like a RV filter, and they put on their misters to where they can still have misting. Because if I put a mister out, I tried with my chickens, it clogged up within like 3 days.
And another thing with home filtration systems, if you're running off of, sometimes they use salt to filter your well water, and you don't want to put excessive amounts of salt on your garden, so you want to be mindful of that too.
Okay. Make sure I've got, yep. So this is the USDA plant hardiness zone map. Abilene, which I tried to put in the dot, that's why I made the dot so big, because it's somewhere in that general area. The temperature zone, or the zone is 8A for Abilene area, and the temperature range is 10 to 15 degrees. You can see that right here. And that's Fahrenheit, and that is the average annual extreme minimum winter temperature. So what that means is, if you're planting perennial, I know it's a mouthful, isn't it? If you're planting perennials, you need to make sure that they're able to withstand 10 to 15 degree temperatures. So my daughter, she wanted to plant lemon trees. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really going to work. Because citrus trees, they will die if it's anywhere from 18 to 32 degrees, depending on what tree you're planting. So if it gets that low, you're not going to have it. If you're planting it in the ground, you're not going to have a lemon tree next year. So if you want to plant lemons, get a pot, get you a nice dolly, and roll it outside in the summertime and roll it back inside in the wintertime. Okay? Let's see here. You have anything to add on the map?
As far as the zone map, no, I think the next is going to be planting your garden.
Yeah,
Okay.
planting your garden. So what are you going to grow? What vegetables do you like? What vegetables do your family like? Do you want to plant a bunch of beets? If no one in your family eats beets, give them to me. I will eat all of them.
I'll eat them too. I love beets.
They're great for your liver. Are you going to preserve or freeze, can, share? So there's different things that you can do with vegetables, but you need to take that into consideration. When you get a packet of seed, there may be 45 or 50 seeds in this packet for peas. Are you going to plant all these?
I do. Because they all don't make it.
So it's just figuring out how much space you have and what all you're going to put in that space.
And you only want to plant what you're going to eat, unless you're one of those really giving people like my sister. She plants a 40 by 40 garden just so she can give up the majority of it away to the neighbors. She loves doing that. Me, not so much.
And if you don't plant all the seeds in a seed packet, how long could they last?
It depends on how you store them. They are labeled, so at the bottom or somewhere on the package, it'll say it is packed for 23 seed year. So make sure you sell them by that date. I used to work in a germination lab, so I know seeds can live longer than just 1 year, but some of them can't, depending on the oils and stuff that are in the seed. So, and the storage conditions. So if you put them out in your shipping container, don't expect them to survive because they're going to go through that heat cycle and it'll kill everything. But if you keep them indoors, they could last a little bit longer. You can do a germination test, and it's super simple. Wet a paper towel or damp paper towel, put a couple seeds inside, fold it in half, make sure you have paper towel on both sides of the seed, put it in a Ziploc bag, make sure you label what day you put it on, or put it in there, and then 3 or 4 days later check it and see if there's anything germinated, and then wait another 2 or 3 or 4 days to see. So by 12 days, you should have something that has germinated or not. So that would be the best way. Don't put the whole packet, just 5, 6 seed, whatever you have in there.
And also, the Master Gardeners has a series on our website. We also had a series on storing seeds, so you might want to check into that as well.
So right now, when you go to the box stores, you'll see collard greens, cabbage, spinach, broccoli,
chives.
cauliflower. So do you want to plant something right now? If so, grab some of that or grab some seed and put that in the garden. That's going to be more of like a spring garden. You also can plant those in the fall and have a fall garden. But then the summer crop or summer vegetables will be more like tomatoes, peppers, squash,
Squashes,
okra, corn.
cucumbers.
So you need to determine what you're going to plant. And if you're going to plant some, you may be able to harvest your lettuce and then plant a tomato after that.
That's my plan for the spinach. I'm going to plant my spinach next Friday after this last session, and my chives. And then when those expire, then I'll start my tomatoes and peppers and other things as well. And you, Etta?
There is a website called Seed Time
Yes.
that when you list off the vegetables that you want, and there's 2 versions, the free version and the however much you want to
Yeah.
pay for it. But the free version, you list off your vegetables that you wish to plant, and it will tell you either by seed or if you go out and buy the whatever.
The
they call
starter,
it,
yeah.
Starter plants.
starter plants. It'll tell you when to do it.
And it's called Seed Time?
Seed time, yeah.
Seedtime.com or
I'm
org?
gonna it's gonna be one of the 2.
It keeps
Okay.
coming up on my
Just do
Facebook
it.
page.
Google Seed does it.
Yeah.
Seed Time.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so once you figure out all the vegetables that you want to plant, it's time to find seeds or starter plants. Okay?
And if you do start from seed, be mindful. Here in Texas, our last frost generally is about March 29th, the end of March. So if you're starting seed, you want to go 4 or 6 weeks prior to that planting time. This pepper right here, and thank you to the Master Gardener's greenhouse, this was started January 20th. So this will be ready for planting the end of March. But this little guy is going to go in our presentation for the Pepperpalooza. So this guy has a home already. But so you want to be mindful of that. So March 29th is generally our last frost date. So it's safe to plant, or even if you're going to get seeds started outside. Otherwise, you want to stick with your cold hardy plants like your spinaches, your lettuces. My asparagus is coming up right now, so that's a good spring plant as well. Or your onions. My onions I just put in the ground.
So now you say your asparagus is coming up, you planted those
I got
as
two.
seed outside?
I planted them as tubers 2 years ago. So they come up only in the spring, and then I let them go to seed. They're beautiful ferns when they mature. But
And-
they come back every
And,
year.
you know, note for asparagus, if you've never grown asparagus before, I think if you plant the tubers, you have to wait at least 2 years. If you plant by seed, you have to wait 3 years before you can harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to harvest very lightly because they're still building up their root systems.
Yeah. Okay, so starting seeds. So last month, if anyone attended the seed starting class, that video is on the Master Gardener's website or YouTube channel, so you can check that out. But just to recap, make sure that when you have your seed packet, you know and understand what's on the back of it. And then you need to have your tools. So you have your seed starting trays, you have a heat mat, you'll have seed starting soil, and a handy dandy little light. And again, as Dawn mentioned, you'll start them about 6 weeks before the last frost. If you haven't started your tomato seeds yet, then you need to get them started quick. And peppers. And the last thing is, once you have your little plants, make sure you harden them off. And that is acclimating them to the outside temperature. Dawn, do you have any?
Yep, so I'm going to give you, I had to write notes on this one. So you're actually going to take, like this little guy, about 45 degrees, we've actually had some beautiful weather, but you would take it out for a little while, you know, outside, but you still want to protect it because you don't want the wind to knock it over because it's still very fragile. It's been very sheltered. So a few hours each day and protect it from the wind, and each day you progressively go further and further and then let it get some wind. Or even if you're doing it in the house or in the greenhouse, you want to put a fan on it to give it a little movement so it strengthens the stem system. Let's see what else. And the key to success is gradual exposure, and after 2 to 3 days, after being protected, you could leave it out longer and then in the full sun, and then eventually when the nights are going to still be warmer, you'll put that little baby in the ground and you should be good to go.
So I did the bad thing of just shoving them in the ground after I started them, and they didn't like that. They all died. So
It's very stressful.
Yep, it is. Okay, so if you are not wanting to start seeds, you need to find starter plants. And you can go to garden stores, grocery stores will have some, let's see here, farm stores, farmers markets. The Master Gardener plant sale is coming up in April. So those are some places where you can get them. Now, these plants will be ready to go in the ground. They'll be hardened off, and they'll be ready just to plant.
Which ones? The ones at Master Gardener's sale? Or-
Anything that you get at the box stores, yeah, if you go to Walmart and buy some, or they should be ready to be put in the ground. Yes, John?
I priced plants at several stores yesterday.
Yeah.
They have gone drastically up. They're
They have.
$6 each.
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
So transplants are very expensive.
And
$1 a plant. I have 6 in here.
so a packet of seed, so this is PC, this is $2 or $1.99. I've seen some, usually it's tomatoes that are like the heirloom varieties, they'll be up to $4 on seed, and you may not get very many in them, but it's better to buy, I think it's better to buy your tomato seeds and try to start them, because it'll be cheaper in the long run. You will have more plants, or you can hold some seed over for next year.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the seeding process drastically different from seed packets versus seeds from your produce?
I have never saved seed from my produce. Well, I take that back. I have. But what I got was, it must have been a hybrid, because whatever came out was not what I planted. So you have to be mindful of what what seed you are collecting. But I haven't, we'll see, I have not successfully collected seed. Dawn, do you have any?
If you're buying from a farmer's market, a reputable farmer's market, and you talk to the farmer and ask them, what they're using on their plants, you may have success. But if they're using a hybrid, you may not. Now, I've had squash, tomato, peppers, onions come up in my garden. I didn't plant, but they were from rotting fruit that have fallen off. So it does come back, not everything. So it's not something that's foolproof. It's just.
What if you just want to put your seeds outside? When should you do that? Are there certain plants that you need to start in the pot?
Yes.
Yes. Our growing season is relatively short. You might not think so with the heat and the warmer temperatures, but it is short. If you were to start a tomato by seed after March, you may not get any fruit. It's hard to say. I do not start tomatoes, cucumbers, squashes in the ground. I start them this month. I'll be starting them all in the house. So that
You can start in the ground at process fast.
I have done cucumbers in the ground. I have done squash in the ground, and it did fine. But I'm more like, I want it faster. So I'll start it sooner.
And there's some things that like beans and peas that
Those have to go in the ground.
they don't transplant well. And then also like your root vegetables, so beets, carrots, radishes, they don't transfer, very well or at all.
So those you do plant.
Those you
Yes.
plant in the ground. I plant corn in the ground, okra, cucumbers, beans, peas, of course all the carrots. What else? Cucumbers. I don't know if I said that.
A lot of those are also
Watermelon.
good to be planting in your containers, or particularly the bag type containers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there
Yes.
a reason why the vegetables you listed don't transplant very well?
Most of it's root structure. So if they have a long root structure and your pot is this big, you may wind up damaging the root structure, and they don't handle that. They stress out really, really quickly. Any other questions? Okay, what's next? All right, we're going to talk about garden layout.
This is fun.
So planting your garden space. So you have your seed that you're going to plant in the ground. You have your starter plants. Now, I might have planted a tray of 16 tomato plants, but after hardening, I may only have 8. I have a lot of bug pressure, so grasshoppers are everywhere. They don't really eat tomato plants, but I have squirrels too, so they eat everything. So you need to know what you're planting and also how big they're going to get. So tomatoes, you have determinate and indeterminate. Do y'all know the difference between the two? So determinate is going to be more of a compact plant. Indeterminate is going to be a tree.
The sky's the limit.
Yeah, it loves to grow.
And on indeterminate tomato plants, we stake them up. Actually, if you were to put a tomato plant in the ground and just let it lay there, every spot on that tomato plant that hits the ground is going to grow a root. It's pretty fascinating. Every place where a leaf comes off and it's hitting the ground, it's going to grow a root. When I put my tomatoes in the ground, if I were to put this in the ground, I'm going to put it in the ground right up to here. So it gives the tomato plant a nice, hardy start to its life.
I've been seeing also that you can plant them
Sideways?
Yeah, sideways, and that gives them more of a root structure, and then this will actually turn and go straight up.
Straight towards the sky. Tomatoes are fast.
Yep.
Yep.
Goes
Yep.
towards the light.
How do you know which is which on the determinate and indeterminate?
Usually the determinate ones, their stalks are thicker. They're more thicker. I don't know how else. They're stocky.
Most of the time, it should say it on the packet or the
tag.
the tag.
And the other things about the determinate is the fruit is going to fruit pretty much all at the same time. So when it's done, it's done. Whereas these, you're always going to get fruit with the correct conditions. You'll always get fruit until the frost gets it. But you remember, they get tall, but I trim mine off. I took apart cattle panels and made cages, so I have 4 feet. So when it hits the top of that cattle panel, bzzz, right off the top. And
Get bushier then?
it does get bushier. And then sometimes I've taken the stuff I've buzzed off and put it in the ground and it roots.
I've also read and viewed on video that what was I going to try to say? I kind of lost my thought, but putting shade over the tomato plants, tomatoes and peppers.
I have shade cloths over mine in the heat of the summer. Yeah, because that sun is brutal. Brutal.
It is. Okay, so back to garden layout. So one thing is to document your space. You're going to find out how big of a nerd I am in my next slide. So you make a garden map. You can use a garden journal. This is a really neat book, and it has all sorts of great information in it. But you can do like write down all the information. A lot of that is off the seed packets. Anyway, y'all can take a look at that.
We have plenty of books up here for you to look at after our presentation. You're welcome to.
All right, garden maps. Ready? Here's mine. All right, I love Excel. So everything I do is in Excel. But this is my garden map. Yeah, you can see I like some things that I planted early and some late, and then things that did not work. But I had a lot of space, and I didn't fill up my space. Guess what did fill up my space?
Weeds.
Bermuda grass. So now
Evil.
I'm working on cleaning out all my garden, all the Bermuda grass out of my garden. It's very tedious. So make sure whatever space you're using that you keep it weed free. All right, so this is just one way. There's other ways.
This is my way.
This is Dawn's.
And rotation is very important on your gardens too. You don't want to plant the same plant in the same area year after year because you get more bugs, you're depleting your soil nutrients, and you don't want to plant peppers where your tomatoes were the year before because tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, they're all nightshades. They all share the same nutrients, so they would remove the nutrients out of the soil that they've been in. So you want it, like with mine, I have last year I had tomatoes here, so this year I'm going to have squashes. But before I do my squashes, I'm going to do corn and my early spring vegetables. So when they're done, then I'll stick my squashes in, and also my beans. 3 sisters, you got corn, squash, and beans. So that's what's going to go in that spot.
How big are your spaces, like your asparagus and your strawberries? How big is that?
That's 16 by 4 foot,
Okay, and then you got your squash, how big are those?
4 by 8.
4 by 8?
4 by 8. Because if you think about it, 4 foot wide, I can reach almost to the other side, and what I can't, I can come in from the other side and get.
How high off the ground are you?
A foot.
Foot?
1 foot, yeah. And it's worked out well for me. Weeding is almost non-existent. As far as my strawberries and asparagus, I grow basil, borage, dill, zinnias all up in there, and just let them go wild. I like planting zinnias in with all my other flowers.
So your basil in that set, you plant the same?
Yep, I just sprinkle
Or
them.
are they reoccurring each year?
Now, it's been in there so long, they just come up on their own. I don't even have to plant in there anymore. The borage, I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I do have to plant that again. I had some over in the zucchini, yellow squash, and peppers last year, and I had some coming up here in the fall until the freeze got them. But they were flowering right up until then.
And bees love them.
Oh my gosh, definitely you gotta plant for pollinators. Without pollinators, you're not gonna have plants. You're not gonna have your fruit.
So what do your frowny faces mean?
They didn't work. So, and that doesn't mean I won't try again. Yeah, see, beans, I tried bush beans. They didn't do well. I did try them over here one year, and they didn't do well here. So now that's 2 years I didn't do well. So I tried pole beans going between these two last year, and they grew beautifully. But when that heat came, no more flowers, and I got 1 or 2 string beans. and that was it.
I have one question. So you said not to plant the same thing, to change it up. So even if you amend your soil, it still won't work if you want to plant the same?
I'm not going to say it won't work, and I'm not going to say it will work. It's whatever works for you.
Give it a try and see.
You can give it a try and see. I'm up for trying anything. I do rotate though, because you're going to get bugs, and the bugs are going to come back to that same spot. And so whatever you can do to deter the bugs is a good thing, because I don't use pesticides, so I swish. So
Yes.
With the sunshade and the heat, do you just sunshade, put it over everything or only certain vegetables?
I try to put it over everything, but you can't get everything. I have I think it's a 40 by 20. I have 2 sunshades for my whole garden space right here, and I couldn't tell you exactly how big it is. I don't get all of the asparagus, but by the time I'm shading, the asparagus is done anyway, and the strawberries are done, so I don't really care too much about those. But my tomatoes and everything else, I try to really make sure they're covered.
Another thing that I've tried is I have my cucumbers on a trellis, and I was planting beets and carrots and radishes underneath them to see if they would grow. Let's see here, my cucumbers were actually facing south, so everything inside was not getting much, but I did have some radishes, and I left them in the ground way too long. They came out to be like that big. I juiced them, and they were very hot.
I grow radishes amongst my vegetables just to help with the pollinators. I don't eat radishes. I don't even like radishes. But I grow them just to help aerate the soil and attract the pollinators.
What type of wood did you use to build your garden?
I did use pressure-treated wood. The pressure treating they put on the wood these days is not toxic like it used to be. I haven't had a problem with it.
How long have you had it?
This will be my third summer.
Because normally wood is wood, it rots out, from the water and
Yes.
the alkali and all that stuff. So do you put something on the inside?
I put cardboard on the bottom. When they rot out, I'll replace them. I mean, I just screwed them in. They're portable, really.
So I got another one that I want to build, but it was like, I want to build it and I want it to stay. I don't want to rebuild
Yeah.
it. So,
See, I didn't know how. I moved here from Connecticut via Alabama, so my growing conditions were a lot different than here. I didn't know what I was getting into here. So I figured if I went this route and if I kept not working very well, I would just get rid of it and just put grass down. So I didn't want anything so permanent.
Okay, and here's my nerd self again. All right, this is a garden planner. So this is back to your seed packets and telling you, like, okay, what are you going to plant? This, you're writing everything down. When are you going to start it indoors or not? So pole beans, we're not going to start it indoors. We're going to try to plant it on April 5th. It tells you your optimum germination temperature. That should be on your seed packet. That's using a heat mat. And most of them have a thermostat. Mine don't. They just go.
Mine isn't. It was
Okay.
just from a box
Some
store.
of them, if you can get a thermostat on it, then try to set it at that temperature. And then when you actually plant it, so you can keep up with the progress of your plants. And so there's a fall one as well.
And remember, if you're planting by seeds in your garden, mark it. Mark when you put it in the ground and mark what it is, because you're going to get it coming up, and if you haven't marked it, you're going to, what did I put there? Oh my gosh, what is it? So you'd have to wait till it matures to find out what it is.
And maybe then you still don't know.
Yeah.
It depends on the tomato variety you planted. All right, we want your garden to be successful. Everyone wants a successful garden because that's, something that you're going to eat. You're going to sustain. Yes.
What do you use for markers for your garden? Because I bought different types and they always fade out with the sun, or it's just.
You know the vertical shades, those plastic vertical shades? If you got one you're throwing out, cut it up right on that. That works. Or you can buy garden markers. I've even used, after I've put down seeds, I'd even put this over there for a while and staple it to the piece of wood that I have out there until the rain gets it, and makes it dissolve.
I saw something this week where you have your yogurt containers or a white container that you cut the bottom off of that and then make strips, and then you can write on it or paint on it. Yes, John?
Pencil works the best.
Pencil works the best.
Pencil?
Okay. Yeah, I know Sharpie.
I bought a box of the white markers, like 200 of them off of Amazon, and they're very cheap.
Oh, the plastic ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some of those too.
Yes, ma'am.
We've used like plastic silverware, like the white
Oh,
silverware,
yeah.
and then write on it with Sharpie
Uh-huh.
or rub-a-dub pens if you don't want it to fade. And you can also write it on the handle and stick that in the ground, and that way you can always pull it up.
And I heard forks in the garden keeps cats away.
Keeps a lot of critters.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Does
yeah.
that really work?
I don't know. I don't have cats in my neighborhood.
I don't know if I can fork.
I don't even have
8,000
squirrels.
square feet.
I have birds.
They would just eat it. Okay, so to have a successful garden, make sure, again, we're talking watering, that you are watering correctly. And again, we've got this, it will detect moisture, or you can stick your finger down in the ground to see if it's wet or not. Sometimes the top dries out, but down in the roots it could be wet. Especially with clay soil, it's going to retain the moisture more. So again, sand, it gets dry pretty quick.
Now, do the seed packets or anything tell you like how they need to be watered or how often or anything like that?
I don't
Or is
think
Is
so.
the goal just to constantly keep the ground moist?
A general rule is 1 inch a week, kind of like with your lawns. But then, with our droughts and everything, keep an eye on your plants. If they're looking real wilty, give them a drink.
So basically then just try to keep the ground moist all the time,
But
not over.
not overly moist, because wet roots, they could get, plants really don't like wet roots either.
Because they need oxygen too.
Yeah.
This, soil and everything will have oxygen in it. And if you keep it damp or wet all the time, it's not going to get oxygen, and then your plant will wind up suffering from that. Usually you'll see like a yellowing of the leaves for that.
Okay, thank you.
Fertilizing, that is huge. I love to put a plant in the ground and be like, good luck, buddy. Fertilizing has been a struggle for me. So I'm doing better. But it is, make sure that you understand what their fertilization requirements are. The other day I sat down, I was like, how much fertilizer does a tomato need? And determine their and you can Google search all that and document it, write it down, because it may say you need to put nitrogen every 4 weeks. So you just know what vegetables need a lot of fertilizer.
And don't over-fertilize. If you're watering or if we get a good rainstorm, that fertilizer, if you think about it, it's going to run off, and you don't want it getting into natural water sources. A lot of the, like Kirby Lake, people from over-fertilizing their lawns, and with the runoff, it's destroying the lakes and everything. So be mindful. Read about your plant. Read about the seeds. You don't want to over-fertilizer. That's just as bad as under-fertilizing. I also have, anybody know what NPK is on a fertilizer bag? Okay. There's complete fertilizers and incomplete fertilizer. A complete fertilizer is 10-10-10. The incompletes will have a different number, like this one specifically for tomatoes. When I fertilize my beds, I do it before I even plant. I've already fertilized my beds and turned, and so they're ready to go. But I also have a sheet up here if you want to take one. Help yourself.
So
Explains it.
N is nitrogen, P is phosphorus, and K is potassium.
There's going to be a quiz at the end of this.
So we talked a little about some of the plants, but there are plants that are heavy feeders. So like corn, squash, tomatoes, peppers, melons, and cucumbers. They like a lot of fertilizer. But again, not too much. Make sure you know how much they need and how often.
And that brings us back to looking at your plants. If they don't look healthy, figure out what's going on. You got to you might have an insect problem. That's why they're not looking healthy. Dig around the plant. See what's underneath your plant. See if something's feeding off the roots. So you want to get your hands dirty. You got to get in there.
There's also different types of fertilizer. So you can do compost. You can do something like this. There's compost tea, coarse manure, the control release. There's spikes, and there's like organic fertilizer. So it's doing research on what you want your garden to be, what your vegetables, what you want it to be.
And anybody have farm animals? Chickens? If you have chickens, I mean, that's a hot fertilizer. You cannot use that right away. It has to compost, just like the cow manure. Now, if you have llamas, somebody I know used to have llamas, that is not hot. You can use that right away. They can be in your garden poop. You know, it's great. So keep that in mind, too, what you're putting in there.
Yes, I have those llamas now.
That's right.
There's a lot of llama poo in my garden. They're llama beans. I'm calling them llama beans.
And they don't smell.
Turn into mosquitoes.
Ew.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about welcoming pollinators. So plant flowers. Plant flowers within your garden space. Bring in your honeybees, your butterflies, bumblebees. I had more bumblebees last year than I did honeybees, and I have a hive of honeybees. I don't know where my bees were going, but they were not in my garden.
Zinnias are great for that. Marigolds are great for that. I'm going to say this wrong. Nasturtiums. Nasturtiums are
Yes.
good. Borage. I love borage now. Anything, even your vegetable plants, they're going to attract the pollinators anyway because they have flowers, right? So.
Marigolds. Nasturtiums.
I don't know how to spell that.
Nastur.
Nastur.
Google.
I had it written down somewhere. The other thing about bringing in pollinators is if you are applying insecticide, limit that or apply it in the evenings, because you will wind up killing your bees, all your pollinators that come through. Weeds. We've talked a little bit about weeds.
Weeds,
gosh.
and more weeds. Get where I'm going?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's never ending. So just find something. I have a really cool tool. I think it's called an action hoe or a stirrup hoe. In sand, it works really well. I don't know about clay. But it looks like a stirrup, kind of like that. And it's kind of bladed on both sides, and you push it, and then you pull it.
Jackie, you were just talking about that the other day.
Yeah. It is a wonderful tool. I would recommend that to everyone. Let's see here. And Bermuda grass, you just have to dig down and pull it all up.
Like 6 feet.
And then pests. There's going to be tons of pests. They love garden vegetables as well. Tomato hornworms. If you know anyone that has chickens, just pick them and put them in a bucket. Give them to the neighbor that has chickens. The chickens will love you for it. Mine love it.
Also iguanas.
Iguanas. I don't know too many people who have iguanas.
No.
Maybe donate them to the zoo. That maybe some of their stuff would like that. You can manually pick off, like the tomato hornworms. That's the only thing you can do is just pick them off. Squash plants. Yes, John.
On the hornworms?
Yes.
They glow.
Yes, they do.
They do.
So one of the biggest things you can do for your tomatoes is go hit them with a UV flashlight.
Because they will start out about that big.
And then all of a sudden they're as big as your thumb.
Yes.
And it's like, I was just out there yesterday. Where'd you come from? And it's like right there in your face.
And just even though they say tomato hornworms, mine like my peppers. So I had tomato hornworms all over my pepper plants.
Yep, same family, same plant family.
I've seen people use like little shop vacs to get squash bugs off of their squash plants. So that's a way. Chickens don't like squash bugs because I guess they're kind of like a stink bug. So don't feed them to there. Just put them in water or soapy water and let them drown. That's the only thing you can do with squash bugs.
A little trick to try and avoid squash bugs, and I learned this from John, is plant your squash after they've already gone by. And what was it, June or July you said to plant squash?
Yeah, a little later.
So the bugs have already moved on because there's no plant to eat, so they went to the neighbor's yard.
And then you also can get some predator insects, so praying mantis, ladybugs. And leave your spiders in your garden.
Yes.
I have orb weaving spiders. Those things are amazing. I had one that stayed on my okra, and she was there the entire season. And I just left her alone, and she just ate all these little bugs. So leave your spiders. They're good. They're good.
And a book about that, it's called Good Bug, Bad Bug. Good read. Good read.
Okay, we're going to talk about succession planting. And this is, okay, we have our packet of 50 pea seed. We don't want peas that often, right? We don't want to plant all of them and have a bushel of peas to eat unless you're going to freeze or can it. So instead of planting all of them at once, let's plant maybe 10 seeds one day, and then we'll say 15 days later we're going to plant 10 more seeds. So you have a variation of plant sizes, and once these play out, because they will have a peak, once these stop blooming and producing, you're going to have several more generations to grow from.
And
so you can do this with spinach, beans, squash, cucumbers. There's different timings that you can plant every single vegetable, so you have a continuous supply. So like corn, everyone wants to plant corn, but when you plant corn, when do you get corn? July 4th. What if you want corn August 4th? Well, plant you a couple rows after that.
Exactly. Yep.
How do you know the timing between each? Does it vary for each?
It does vary. The information I got, so spinach was 7 days, every 7 days. Bush beans every 10 days. Cucumbers every 21 days. And squash every 30 days. Those are the ones that I just selected because that's some of the common ones here. So just searching succession planting for rutabagas, whatever you want.
And also on the back of the seed packets, it'll tell you how many days to maturity, so you can gauge from that as well. So you'd want to go like a week or 2 weeks after that mature date to start your next succession.
We have rotation on here, and we touched on that with Dawn's garden space, where she's rotating her squash and her tomatoes, and everything just kind of moves like a clock. And let's see what else we've got. Companion planting. I think we touched on this, the three sisters.
Yep.
So you want something tall. So corn or sunflowers, that's going to act as your stabilizer for your vining plant that comes up. So pole beans are really good. Sometimes cucumbers, you can get those to grow up, and then they work together. And then you need something that has leaves on it. So maybe like a watermelon or squash, and that's going to help keep the soil kind of shaded, so your weeds won't go through the roof. So that's what Three Sisters. It's been used for a very long time. I think Native Americans were using that many years ago. So it's very neat. We did this in a garden, and it was really neat to watch.
And again, do your research. Not all plants get along. I have another little handy chart up here that tells you companion plants and not so companion plants. And you can intermix herbs with your vegetables as well.
And you,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Need still a trellis of some sort? Because is it not too heavy, the vining one, going up the tall one?
Well, the corn should provide enough structure for the vines to go up. Same thing with the sunflowers. They should have enough structure, because sometimes sunflower, depending on the type you get, I've seen their base to be about that big. They get pretty. They're a sturdy plant.
Okay, maybe I grew it different.
Maybe. Well, I know.
A cucumber, being very fruitful, growing up. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. I know the sweet corn, like my sweet corn only gets about this tall. Now field corn, you can get it 12 feet tall. So if you're planting pole beans, maybe you want to find a field corn, because pole beans can get 8 to 10 to 12 feet tall, long.
They'll grow as tall as their structure.
Yeah.
And what I've done when I've done the Three Sisters before is I would plant one corn, one bean. I wouldn't plant all around the corn, so it would just be one and one. And so it's just one plant growing up the other. I never had a problem with it falling over. I haven't tried it here, but in Connecticut, it was very successful.
And there's a lot of guides online of what you can plant together, and then things that you shouldn't plant together, like the corn and the tomatoes. They don't do well together, mainly because of worms, and also there's a fungal blight that they can share. And, all right, we have a lot of resources. Books, magazines, of course, seed packets. There's, what is this one?
Yep, those are seed.
Seed guides. Internet is full of everything. Master Gardeners, the Almanac, Farmer's Almanac is a great,
Comes out every
great
year.
resource. Yep. They have a great website as well.
Any questions, John? Except for John.
Another great resource.
Yes.
As Big Country Master Gardeners, we do have a YouTube channel, and we have somewhere in the order of 50 videos on that channel, and a lot of them do cover vegetables on a lot of the topics that we've been talking about with a much more in-depth discussion.
Any questions that we haven't touched on, or just more clarification?
I noticed on both of your gardens, neither of you had potatoes. Are they difficult here, or are they just something you chose not to grow?
I did have some potatoes. I put them in feed sacks just as a test, and I got just a handful. So I've only grown potatoes. I grew potatoes in a raised bed in my other house, and I think they are still growing there. It's like you can't get rid of them once you get them. But I mean, I didn't have much success. I know a grower that plants them in like old straw or like hay bales, and he actually sells them to farmers markets. So it just depends. Yes.
Sure.
I do potatoes. I do have good luck. The soil has to be fairly loose. Have to mount them up. And Valentine's Day is the day to plant around here for potatoes.
Okay.
I do know there are seed potatoes for sale. I bought some yesterday, and there's a term called, I don't want to say it, C-H-I-T. You chip your potatoes. Sorry. But that's setting them out and letting you set the eyes up, and you need to have like a lighted area where they're in, and they will start growing the little sprouts, and then you can plant them. Some people cut them. I've heard good and bad things about that. Some people just plant the whole potato. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have something there?
So I have never had a garden period whatsoever, so I want to do a spring garden. What are some easy beginner plants?
Spinach, chives,
Radishes.
onions. Onions are great. I've had great success with onions.
So we have some, I guess you call them seed onions? What are those called?
Yeah, this is what your onions would look like, and you want to put them in the ground only about an inch and about 12 inches apart.
And you can find these now, and
Yep.
they need to go in the ground
Yep.
now. I planted mine Sunday morning.
12 inches radius.
You want to give them room to, that's what it says on the package. I go a little closer because I have limited space. And then there's red onions. You got your Texas sweet, you got your red. But a lot of people will go by just the package and that's it, they're done. I did my 12 inches and I was like, ooh, I could put one in there. And it still looks good. And I know they're going to do fine because I had success last year.
Okay, totally newbie question.
That's fine.
So one of those onions only makes one onion?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You need one onion in that 12-inch radius?
Yeah, they get big. I had onions last
know
year
much
about this
closer.
big, about softball size.
I guess it depends on how big you want your onions too, because some people,
Yeah.
they like the smaller ones. So if you want to plant them closer together, you may just have to harvest them
What are those
when they're
onions
smaller.
People are all like together, they're just string ones, they're like that big, they're just like.
Are you talking about garlic?
Oh, No, the green onions.
Oh, the green onions?
That's basically what you have.
Yeah, right here. These I'm going to put in the pot next Friday, and then just as I need them, trim them. And those will come back every year. Those are chives. Those will come back. Those are a perennial.
You know, the ones that we get a whole bunch of. You know,
It's green onions.
We've got those growing in our backyard.
Green onions.
First week,
You can probably get
I
seed.
got them.
In Alabama, I had wild onions growing through the yard.
They grow it, yeah.
Just
but
grow-
you,
flip 'em.
I think you might start those from
We're not
seed,
harvesting them enough to put them on.
but I've never done it before. I think you start those from seed probably indoors, and then you can get your green onions from there. But I don't know if it's a different type of variety, because like the white ones over here are 1015s, and the red ones with the green shoot are candy,
Stripe, you said? Candy
no,
stripe?
candy apple red or something like that, red candy apple. And anyway, so you need to know what your variety is, and I don't know what the varieties are for green onions. One thing I want to mention about this is we do have the Big Country Master Gardeners page. There is a section in there that is a plant selector tool, so you may have to click on a couple boxes to find it, but it is really neat. And you can go in there and you can select your county, and then if you want to grow tomatoes, it's going to pop up all the tomatoes that are really successful in this area. So that may be a good place to start too, to find some varieties. And if you're looking for those varieties, you may have to go to like the garden centers to find what you're looking for. Okay, and last slide, we do have more training opportunities or learning opportunities. We have our Saturday seminars. Of course, February we're having Pepperpalooza. It is a limited space, so if you have not registered yet, go onto the Big Country Master Gardeners site or Facebook and find the link to register.
That is our only seminar. There is a fee for that seminar.
There is. But you get some good things to take home with you.
Absolutely.
There's a propagation one, which I love propagation, so that's like seed starting and all sorts of stuff. So that's a very good class to take. There's entomology, vegetables, herbs, compost, and birds and the bees. And then, of course, there's the monthly library series. I believe there is a calendar of events in the back. And then plant sale is coming up in April. You can order online and then pick up, is it April 13th? And then in person?
In person on the 14th.
On the 14th. So, any additional questions? Everybody.
Does your plant sale do like the seedlings, or what is the plant sale?
It will be, we have trees, shrubs,
Perennials.
flowers, perennials, annuals.
We'll have
We'll
vegetables.
have vegetables. So there's all sorts of stuff in there.
Yes, ma'am?
And you mentioned that the green onions are perennial.
Yep, the chives.
Yeah, are onions perennial?
No,
I've never
no,
tried to
no.
grow.
Once you yank that onion up, that's it. Because the seed actually, if you watch the onions grow, a lot of the top portion is going to come out of the ground. You don't want to cover that back up. That has to come out of the ground for whatever reason, I forget now. But at the top of this, you're going to get what's called a scape. And if you come up here and look at this one, there's a miniature one. And that is where the actual seeds will form if you wanted to collect the seeds and store them and then do them for the next year. But I just yank them and eat them. I mean, I love onions.
Okay,
Yes,
do you have
sir.
a question? Go.
Do onions grow true to seed?
I've never grown from seed. I have no idea. I have no idea. And there was a
That's the
question
next
over
experiment.
here. Yeah. Was there a question over here?
Okay, so I know this is a hard one, but how much time do you invest on a weekly basis in your garden?
I have a very large garden, so I'm out there about 2 hours in the morning. So during the heat, I wake up and I go out there and I'm weeding, I'm looking at bugs, I'm watering, I'm making sure everything has what it needs.
It's every day.
I go out daily and check for bugs, mainly for bugs.
I don't really like it then.
I love it.
I love it,
it. I had
I'm
the
even-
best tan last year.
I'm going to start 2 more raised beds with just herbs in it this year.
And you said your garden is how big?
I think it's around 8,000 square feet. Yeah.
I
it's
don't know
big.
the square footage, but I have 2 16-foot by 4 and I have 2 8 by 4s. And then I have buckets outside as well.
So that's all I do. All I do is garden.
I'm more on her
Right along its
side.
spell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a couple hours a week.
Yeah, yeah.
A day.
If you're really.
I lose track of time, actually, when I'm out there. My husband will call me and he'll say, you want to come in and eat? I want to thank you all. You've been
Yeah.
wonderful. Another question?
What do you guys recommend to fight the grasshoppers? We live out on the farm out in the middle of BFE
Okay.
and
Turkeys.
Yeah, I
We're
have
all going to get
chickens.
turkeys in our little neighborhoods.
Yeah, I have chickens and they love the grasshoppers, but I have chickens free ranging in my garden and they took out my pepper plants, they took out my bean plants. So you have to know, like I now have a fence within the fence to keep the chickens out. They can fly over it, but most of the times they don't. But yeah, chickens, guineas, turkeys. If you're looking for, I guess, pest control, like insecticide or something like that, which I don't do that because I have bees, I'll get with you and tell you what I know. But other than that, it's either trying to catch them or you have to get a bird to eat them. Yeah, because I dealt with the same thing. Yes, they've taken out, I planted like 7 pecan trees. They ate all the leaves off the pecan trees. I have 0 pecan trees. So yeah, they were bad. Hopefully the freeze killed all the eggs. I know it
We
won't.
haven't had much of a
I'm thinking every
freeze.
year, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah. So again, thank you, and you're
Yes.
more than welcome to come up here and take a look at anything here. The books need to stay, but these pamphlets here, if you want anything, you're more than welcome to take one.
And again, we do have the soil sample bags in the back.
Yes. Get your soils tested.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.